Welcome to Dreamy Mystery. Here's what makes no sense about the dawn of human civilization, the sheer, dizzying speed of it all. For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers, their lives dictated by the seasons and the migrations of game. Then, around 10,000 BCE, the agricultural revolution began, a slow, arduous process of taming plants and animals. But then, just a few short millennia later, something truly extraordinary happened in Mesopotamia. Suddenly, almost explosively, we see the emergence of cities like Uruk, with populations swelling to tens of thousands. The invention of cuneiform writing, the wheel, sophisticated metallurgy, monumental architecture in the form of ziggurats, and complex social hierarchies. It's often presented as an organic leap, a testament to human ingenuity blossoming in the Fertile Crescent. But what if it wasn't a sudden, spontaneous genesis? What if instead it was a reignition, a rediscovery perhaps, or even a deliberate receding of knowledge by something or someone far older than the mud bricks of Sumer? This isn't about aliens or magic. It's about the possibility of a forgotten chapter in our own story, an ancient race whose echoes shaped our beginning in ways we've never dared to imagine. It challenges our fundamental understanding of human progress and our place in the vast, winding river of history. If you're enjoying this journey through history, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And I'm always curious. Drop a comment letting me know what city and time zone you're watching from. There's something special about knowing this story is reaching people all over the world. Let's start with the obvious question nobody asks. Why Sumer? Why there? And why did it all happen so fast? Think about this for a second. The period from the first permanent settlements to the first true cities, with their intricate economies and written laws, spans mere centuries, a blink in the eye of geological time. It's a rapid acceleration that defies the slow, incremental pace of innovation we observe for most of human prehistory. What if the ground beneath those first ziggurats held secrets far older than the mud bricks themselves, not just of previous human inhabitants, but of a different kind of civilization entirely? The traditional narrative is clear. Humanity slowly climbed from the caves of the Paleolithic, through the Neolithic Revolution where we learned to farm and build villages, and then, around 4000 BCE, Sumer burst forth. We talk about Uruk, often called the first true city, which by 2900 BCE might have housed between 50,000 and 80,000 people. This was a place of staggering complexity, boasting not just the earliest known writing system, cuneiform, but also the potter's wheel, advanced bronze metallurgy, sophisticated irrigation systems that transformed a harsh landscape into a breadbasket, and monumental architecture like the Iana district temples dedicated to Inanna. It's a story of genius, adaptability, and the perfect confluence of resources in the land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. But what if this suddenness, this almost miraculous leap, isn't quite as spontaneous as it appears? What if some fundamental knowledge was already present, not organically developed then, but inherited, or more precisely, refound? Imagine a lost era, a forgotten people who possessed these capabilities thousands of years earlier, a significant, localized advanced culture we'll call the architects of the veil, for their uncanny ability to disappear without a trace. Where would we even begin to look for their fingerprints? Not necessarily in grand, obvious ruins, but in the subtle anomalies, the pieces that don't quite fit our existing historical puzzle. Consider the precision found in certain ancient sites, or the occasional discovery of an artifact that seems technologically out of place. Perhaps a strange metallurgical composition, or an understanding of mathematics far beyond its supposed era. These aren't necessarily signs of flying saucers, but rather a different, perhaps more nuanced, understanding of materials, energy, and social organization. Perhaps their technology wasn't about building pyramids that endure for millennia, but about harnessing natural systems in ways that left little physical trace, or employing materials that degraded completely over vast stretches of time. Their very disappearance might be the most telling clue. A great disruption, a natural catastrophe, a cataclysmic flood, or even a self-inflicted decline could have wiped their physical presence from the earth, leaving behind only fragments of their understanding, encoded in myths, oral traditions, or even embedded in the very landscape itself. The lack of overt evidence, in a way, becomes evidence itself when you consider the immense destructive power of erosion, tectonic shifts, and the sheer fragility of most human endeavours over tens of thousands of years. After this cataclysmic disruption, small pockets of their knowledge, or perhaps even their direct descendants, survived. These custodians of ancient understanding wouldn't have been rulers in the conventional sense, but rather subtle influences. Quote, who observed the emerging human communities in places like the Fertile Crescent. They saw the potential in the land between the rivers, a perfect crucible for a new beginning. Their goal wasn't to dominate, but to subtly guide, to impart the principles of organized society, irrigation, urban planning, or the abstract thought necessary for writing. The rapid rise of Sumer, then, wasn't a miracle of spontaneous genius, but an accelerated learning curve based on a hidden curriculum, a legacy gently nudged back into existence. But that's just the beginning of the story. Next, we'll dive into the tantalizing hints, the specific anomalies, the strange artifacts or structures that might just whisper of their existence, the echoes from a time before time, found in the most unexpected places. We left you last time standing at the precipice of a profound question, didn't we? We challenged the comfortable narrative of human civilization's spontaneous explosion in Sumer, positing instead that it was a reignition, a reseeding of knowledge from a forgotten ancient race, the architects of the Veil. Now let's truly delve into why. This re-evaluation is not merely an academic exercise, but a vital quest for understanding our true heritage. What exactly makes Sumer's ascent so dizzyingly, almost impossibly, fast? Consider the scale of the transition. For hundreds of thousands of years, humanity's progress was a slow, arduous process, a crawl across the vast plains of prehistory. Tool technology evolved incrementally, social structures remained relatively simple, and our footprint on the planet was light. Then, around 10,000 BCE, something shifts. We see the first stirrings of settled life, agriculture, and then, in Mesopotamia, a sudden, almost violent acceleration. Within a mere few millennia, a blink in the eye of geological time, we witness the birth of not just villages, but sprawling urban centres like Uruk, boasting populations that would rival many modern cities until the Industrial Revolution. We are talking tens of thousands of inhabitants, demanding unprecedented levels of organisation, resource management, and social cohesion. How, we ask you, did a people, only recently transitioning from nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyles, leap to such staggering complexity with such apparent ease? Where are the millennia of trial and error, the countless failed experiments, the slow, painful accumulation of the specialized knowledge required to feed, govern, and house such a dense population? We see fully formed irrigation systems capable of taming the capricious Tigris and Euphrates, transforming arid lands into fertile breadbaskets. This wasn't simply digging ditches. It required sophisticated engineering, an understanding of hydrology, and the collective labour of thousands, all coordinated under a central authority. Such endeavours demand precise planning, a clear vision, and a robust social contract, elements that, by conventional accounts, should have taken far longer to coalesce. Then there is the marvel of writing itself. Cuneiform, arguably the world's first true writing system, emerges from simple pictograms and rapidly evolves into a complex abstract script capable of recording laws, literature, economic transactions, and astronomical observations. This wasn't a gradual drift over countless generations. This was a rapid cognitive leap, a monumental achievement that required abstract thought, symbolic representation, and a structured system for teaching and disseminating this new language. Did this complex system truly spring forth from the scenes of early Sumerians without any prior template, any guiding hand? Or was it, as we propose, a reintroduction, an accelerated curriculum provided by the whisperers, those quiet custodians of ancient knowledge? And what of metallurgy? The sudden mastery of copper and later bronze, the crafting of intricate tools, weapons, and ceremonial objects speaks to a profound understanding of geology, chemistry, and thermodynamics. Where are the thousands of years of primitive smelting, of brittle alloys and flawed castings? Instead, we find sophisticated techniques seemingly appearing ex nihilo, fully realized. The same applies to mathematics and astronomy. The Sumerians developed a sexagesimal base 60 number system, which profoundly influenced later civilizations and created precise calendars and detailed star maps. This wasn't mere observation, it was systematic study, the application of complex mathematical principles to the celestial sphere. Such advanced knowledge feels less like a nascent civilization's discovery and more like a legacy, a carefully preserved inheritance. So, if the architects of the Vale left no overt ruins, no grand monuments screaming their presence, how do we begin to trace their influence? We look for the fingerprints, dear friends. We search for the absence of struggle, the perfection of the initial attempt. We look for knowledge that appears fully formed, technologies that seem to bypass the usual stages of incremental development. We seek out the subtle anomalies, the out-of-place artifacts, and the sudden leaps in understanding that defy the established timeline of human progress. The veil, you see, is not a complete absence, but a subtle distortion, a shimmer in the fabric of history that, once perceived, cannot be unseen. Consider for a moment the Uruk vase or the intricately carved cylinder seals from the Jemdet Nazar period. These aren't crude, tentative artistic expressions. They are sophisticated depictions of a highly organized society, complete with specialized labor, complex religious rituals, and a clear social hierarchy. The details are meticulous, the symbolism rich and layered. Does this look like the first artistic foray of a people still finding their footing? Or does it reflect a pre-existing template, a visual language and social structure that was already well defined? Similarly, the quote-3 a mosaic depicting scenes of war and peace, showcases a highly structured military, a specialized workforce, and a clear administrative capacity. These are not the accidental byproducts of emergent society. They are the deliberate expressions of a system with deep roots. Think of the ziggurats, those monumental stepped temples that dominated the Mesopotamian landscape. Their construction required not only immense labor, but also a profound understanding of architecture, engineering, and logistics. The precise angles, the sheer scale, the planning involved in moving and placing millions of bricks, these are feats that would challenge even modern engineers without advanced tools. Are we truly to believe that a society, supposedly only a few centuries removed from mud huts, could spontaneously conceive and execute such ambitious projects without a master plan, without inherited knowledge of structural integrity and construction management? We suggest that these structures, while built by human hands, were guided by principles and techniques imparted by the whisperers, who understood the underlying physics and mathematics. And what about the very concept of kingship and organized religion? The Sumerian king list, while mythical in its early stages, presents an unbroken lineage, suggesting a profound understanding of governance and succession. The complex pantheon of gods, the elaborate rituals, the role of the priesthood, these are not simple animistic beliefs, but a highly structured theological system. Could these intricate social and spiritual frameworks have been spontaneously generated, or were they too part of the quote-Verstiest, the foundational principles offered by the custodians? These whisperers, you see, were not conquerors dictating terms, they were facilitators, guiding emerging human communities towards organized society, urban living, and abstract thought. Their motivation might have been a sense of stewardship, a desire to reseed civilization after a forgotten cataclysm, or perhaps to guide humanity towards a specific evolutionary path. They provided the framework, the seed knowledge, allowing human ingenuity to flourish within a carefully structured environment. The whisperers were the living legacy of the architects of the Veil. They remembered, they preserved, and they subtly influenced. Their quote 5 wasn't just a physical vanishing act. It was a cultural and historical blending, a conscious choice to operate from the shadows, to allow humanity to believe these advancements were entirely their own. The veil wasn't a barrier to their presence, but a means of subtle intervention, a filter through which ancient wisdom could gently permeate. They were the architects of the accelerated progression, the silent mentors who ensured that the winding river of history flowed swiftly and purposefully, rather than stagnating in the shallows of endless experimentation. We have now laid bare the profound anomalies, the compelling questions that challenge the conventional narrative of Sumer's birth. We have identified the kinds of fingerprints we must seek, the sudden perfection, the inexplicable knowledge, the absence of struggle. In our next journey, we will begin to cast our net wider, examining specific archaeological sites and historical records, searching for more concrete echoes of the architects of the Veil and their whisperers, not just in Mesopotamia, but across the globe. Join us as we continue our intellectual adventure into the greatest mystery of human civilization. Welcome back to Dreamy Mystery, where we dare to ask the questions history often sweeps under the rug. Last time, we laid the groundwork for a truly audacious idea, that human civilization as we know it wasn't a spontaneous eruption of genius in Sumer, but rather a carefully guided reignition, a reseeding of knowledge by an ancient forgotten race, the architects of the veil and their subtle agents, the whisperers. We spoke of the Uensis quote 7, the quote estes, that characterize Sumerian advancements, suggesting a hidden curriculum at play. Now we embark on the next thrilling phase of our journey. If the whisperers were indeed the hidden hand in Mesopotamia, subtly guiding humanity's nascent steps, then surely their fingerprints wouldn't be confined to the Fertile Crescent, would they? The very idea of a global cataclysm, one that necessitated such a sophisticated quote 9 effort, implies a reach far beyond the Tigris and Euphrates. So, where else might we find these tantalizing echoes, these subtle distortions in the fabric of established history, that point to a pre-existing template, a shared, forgotten genesis? We're not talking about overt ruins, mind you, no colossal monuments explicitly stamped with the architect's insignia. That would defy their uncanny ability to disappear, their deliberate choice to leave humanity to believe in its own singular triumphs. Instead, we seek patterns, a shared rhythm in the emergence of complexity, an uncanny synchronicity in the sudden leaps of understanding across continents. We are hunting for the ghost in the machine, the whisper in the wind that links disparate monumental achievements. Let us cast our gaze westward, to the sun-drenched sands of ancient Egypt. What do we see? Not a slow, arduous climb from simple mud brick structures to the staggering complexity of the Giza Plateau. No, what we observe is an almost instantaneous leap. Consider the step pyramid of Djoser, often hailed as the first monumental stone building. Erected around 2670 BCE, it represents a colossal conceptual and engineering jump from earlier, far simpler mastaba tombs. And then, in what seems like the blink of an eye in the eye of geological time, we arrive at the Great Pyramid of Giza, a structure of such astronomical precision and engineering mastery that it continues to baffle modern architects. Where is the evolutionary tree for this architectural marvel? Where are the thousands of failed attempts, the slow, incremental improvements one would expect from a civilization learning to quarry, transport, and precisely fit millions of tons of stone? We see perfect right angles, astonishing alignments to cardinal directions, and a level of mathematical understanding embedded in its very proportions that feels less like discovery and more like inheritance. Could this be another subtle distortion, another instance of the whisperers providing a foundational push, an advanced blueprint that allowed a nascent civilization to bypass millennia of trial and error? The sheer scale and perfection of these early Egyptian structures, appearing almost fully formed, echo the same phenomenon we observed in Sumer. It's as if a master craftsman had handed a novice a perfectly honed set of tools and a finished design, rather than letting them stumble through the arduous process of invention. But our journey doesn't end on the banks of the Nile. Let us travel further east to the enigmatic cities of the Indus Valley civilization, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro. Flourishing around 2500 BCE, contemporaneously with Egypt and later Sumer, these urban centres present an entirely different, yet equally perplexing set of anomalies. Imagine, if you will, cities built with a level of urban planning that rivals, and in some ways surpasses, anything seen until the modern era. Grid-like street layouts, sophisticated drainage and sewage systems in virtually every house, public baths, standardized weights and measures, and monumental civic structures. What is truly astonishing about the Indus Valley civilization is its uniformity and consistency across vast distances, and its apparent lack of palaces or grand temples dedicated to individual rulers or deities. It suggests a highly organized egalitarian society, focused on communal well-being and intricate logistical coordination, and yet, like Sumer and Egypt, the origins of this sophisticated urbanism are remarkably obscure. Where are the preceding villages, the proto-cities that gradually evolved these complex systems? We find some evidence of earlier settlements, yes, but the transition to this level of advanced, widespread urban planning seems remarkably swift and, again, remarkably perfect in its initial manifestation. Could the Whisperers have operated here too, perhaps instilling principles of civic organization and resource management that led to such an advanced, yet seemingly peaceful and non-hierarchical society? The uniformity of brick sizes across hundreds of miles, the precision of their water management systems, these are not the hallmarks of scattered independent discovery, but rather of a shared underlying knowledge base, a global curriculum delivered with regional adaptations. The enigmatic script of the Indus Valley, still undeciphered, could it be another variant of the abstract thought systems imparted by the custodians, a language designed to encode complex ideas rather than simple transactions? Now, prepare to cross oceans with us as we venture into the heart of Mesoamerica. Here, around 1200 BCE, another Euros, quote 10, mysteriously blossoms, the Olmec civilization. Suddenly, from seemingly simple agricultural communities, we witness the emergence of monumental stoneheads, intricately carved and weighing many tons, transported over vast distances. We see sophisticated calendrical systems, early forms of writing, and a profound understanding of astronomy and mathematics, including the concept of zero, long before its formal adoption in the Old World. The Olmecs are often called the quote 11ness of Mesoamerica, because so many subsequent civilizations like the Maya and the Aztecs seem to inherit their core intellectual and artistic traditions. But where did the Olmecs themselves come from? The sudden appearance of their complex iconography, their engineering prowess to move and carve colossal basalt, their abstract numerical systems, it all points to a rapid ascent, a civilization seemingly born with an inherent understanding of advanced concepts. Is it mere coincidence that we find similar patterns of sudden, unexplained complexity across continents in civilizations separated by vast geographical and chronological distances? Or are these the Sai, quote 12 Yan we seek, the subtle reverberations of a singular shared origin point, a knowledge base reseeded by the architect's surviving agents? What we are witnessing across these disparate cultures is not just the invention of tools or simple agricultural techniques. We are seeing the sudden, almost miraculous emergence of abstract thought systems, mathematics, astronomy, writing, complex calendrical calculations, sophisticated social organization, and monumental engineering. These are not simple innovations, they are foundational pillars of civilization itself, requiring a profound leap in cognitive ability and collective coordination. This brings us to the nature of these echoes. They are not identical technologies, you see. The pyramids of Egypt are distinct from the ziggurats of Sumer, and the colossal heads of the Olmec are unique. But the underlying principles, the mastery of geometry, the precision of astronomical observation, the ability to mobilize vast labor forces for complex projects, the development of abstract symbols for communication and calculation. These threads are woven through all of them. It's as if the whisperers, the custodians of the ancient knowledge, provided not a finished product, but a highly advanced curriculum, a set of universal principles adapted to the local materials and cultural inclinations of each emerging human society. Imagine a global network, not of physical trade routes, but of intellectual conduits. The whisperers, operating in the shadows, perhaps moving silently between burgeoning human settlements, identifying those ready to receive the next lesson. They wouldn't build the civilizations themselves. That was humanity's destiny. Their role was far more subtle, more profound, to impart the foundational understanding, the Fortindun, that would accelerate human progress, preventing the species from relapsing into barbarism after the cataclysm. They were the silent tutors, the intellectual midwives, ensuring that the flame of advanced knowledge, once nearly extinguished, was carefully rekindled in multiple crucibles around the world. This hypothesis challenges the very notion of independent invention for many of humanity's most crucial advancements. It suggests that while human ingenuity is undeniable, its initial spark, its earliest and most perfect manifestations, might have been guided by a hand we have chosen to forget. It pushes us to consider that the winding river of history, with its seemingly disparate tributaries of civilization, might actually flow from a single ancient source, carefully channeled and redirected after a cataclysmic disruption. Of course, the conventional narrative offers explanations for each of these phenomena: localized genius, independent discovery, cultural diffusion over vast periods, and we respect those explanations. But do they truly account for the speed, the perfection, and the synchronicity of these advancements across such diverse and often isolated cultures? Do they truly explain the absence of struggle that we see at the very dawn of these complex societies? We believe not. The standard narratives, while comforting, often gloss over these profound anomalies, treating them as mere quirks of history rather than profound clues. What we are proposing is a grander, more interconnected vision of humanity's past. A past where the seeds of civilization were not merely scattered by chance, but carefully planted, nurtured, and guided by entities who understood the true potential and the inherent fragility of intelligent life. These architects of the veil, through their whisperers, ensured that the lessons of the past were not entirely lost, but subtly reintroduced, allowing humanity to rise again, believing it had done so entirely on its own. It's the ultimate act of selfless mentorship, a hidden hand shaping destiny without demanding credit. In our next chapter, we will delve deeper into the specifics of how these whisperers might have operated. What were their methods? What were the specific pieces of knowledge they prioritized? And perhaps most intriguingly, what might have been their ultimate goal, beyond simply reseeding civilization? We will explore the subtle mechanisms of their influence, the almost imperceptible ways they might have woven their knowledge into the very fabric of emerging human thought. Join us then, as we continue to unravel the profound mysteries of our ancient past, and perhaps glimpse the true architects of our present. Welcome back, fellow seekers of forgotten truths, to Dreamy Mystery. We've journeyed through the astounding, almost instantaneous blossoming of civilization in Sumer, then cast our gaze across the ancient world, discovering uncanny echoes in Egypt, the Indus Valley and Mesoamerica. We've introduced the enigmatic architects of the Veil and their silent successors, the Whisperers, as the hidden hand behind this accelerated evolution. But now we must ask the most profound questions. How did they do it? What specific knowledge did they deem most crucial for humanity's nascent steps? And perhaps most intriguing of all, what were their ultimate long-term goals, stretching far beyond the simple receding of civilization? This isn't a simple matter of handing over blueprints, is it? We're talking about influencing entire nascent cultures, imbuing them with complex abstract thought and organizational prowess without leaving a single, undeniable trace of their direct intervention. Remember the quote 17s we observed in Sumerian advancements? This suggests a method far more sophisticated than simple tutelage. The Whisperers, as intellectual midwives, didn't just teach, they catalyzed. Imagine, if you will, not a classroom but a crucible. The Whisperers operated not as overt rulers demanding fealty, but as subtle currents in the river of human consciousness. Their methods were multifaceted, often indirect, yet profoundly effective. One primary method we propose was the strategic seeding of foundational principles within the minds of key individuals. Think of early shaman leaders, proto-priests, or exceptionally intelligent community elders. These weren't necessarily direct conversations in a language we'd recognize. Instead, consider the power of dreams, of sudden, profound insights that seem to descend from nowhere, or the uncanny ability to perceive patterns and solutions that others simply cannot. The Whisperers, with their advanced understanding of the human psyche and perhaps even neurobiology, could have guided these individuals towards a steer, quote, row 18, that felt entirely organic to them. They were not dictating, but illuminating. This, quote 90 Sintinska, was delivered through demonstration and environmental manipulation as much as through mental suggestion. Picture a whisperer subtly demonstrating an efficient irrigation technique, not by lecturing, but by performing it with an almost magical ease, leaving the local farmers to marvel and then emulate. Or perhaps they introduced a superior metallurgical process, not by explaining the chemistry, but by presenting a finished, remarkably durable tool, prompting reverse engineering and rapid adoption. They didn't just provide answers, they provided the framework for asking the right questions and arriving at the most efficient solutions. They showed the destination and gently nudged humanity onto the path. Consider the megalithic structures appearing across the globe, often defying the technological capabilities attributed to their builders. Was it the Whisperers who subtly demonstrated the principles of leverage, counterweights, and precise measurement, allowing early humans to achieve feats that still baffle us today? They were the silent architects of the idea of a ziggurat, the concept of a pyramid, the principle of astronomical alignment. They imbued humanity with the understanding of geometry and physics, allowing us to then apply these truths to our monumental endeavors. This explains the how of the perfection. They weren't learning from scratch. They were given a template, a fully formed understanding of the underlying mechanics. Now, what knowledge did these silent mentors prioritize? It wasn't arbitrary. The core curriculum of the Whisperers focused on principles essential for societal stability, sustained growth, and ultimately self-sufficiency in a post-cataclysmic world. We see a clear emphasis on 1. Foundational mathematics and geometry. This wasn't merely counting, it was the abstract understanding of numbers, ratios, and spatial relationships. Why? Because mathematics is the language of the universe. It underpins engineering, astronomy, urban planning, resource management, and even social organization. The sudden appearance of sophisticated metrology and geometric principles in Sumerian construction and land division, in Egyptian pyramids, and in the precise layouts of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro speaks volumes. The Whisperers understood that without this bedrock no complex civilization could truly flourish or even sustain itself. It allowed for predictive capabilities, for efficient allocation of labor, and for the very concept of structured reality. Observational astronomy and calendrical systems. Beyond the practicalities of agriculture, knowing when to plant and harvest, astronomical knowledge offered a profound sense of order and predictability. It connected humanity to the cosmos, fostering a worldview that transcended immediate survival. The precise calendrical systems of the Olmec, the astronomical alignments of Egyptian temples, and the meticulous sky charts of Sumer were not just curiosities. They were vital tools for organizing time, ritual, and collective effort. The Whisperers provided a cosmic clock, allowing humanity to synchronize with the rhythms of the world and the heavens, preparing them for long-term planning and understanding cycles far beyond their immediate experience. Metallurgy and advanced material science, for their time, the Bronze Age didn't just happen, it was a technological revolution. The ability to extract, refine, and alloy metals provided superior tools for agriculture, construction, and defense. This was knowledge that dramatically increased productivity and changed the face of warfare, though we suspect the Whisperers emphasized its constructive applications. The sudden mastery of bronze in Mesopotamia, the sophisticated goldwork in the Andes, or the unique alloys found in other ancient sites point to an accelerated understanding of material properties, far beyond what simple trial and error would suggest. This provided humanity with the means to shape their environment more effectively. Complex social organization and urban planning. Uruk, with its tens of thousands of inhabitants, its ziggurats, and its intricate administrative systems, didn't emerge from a collection of isolated huts overnight. The Whisperers understood that individual brilliance was insufficient. Sustained progress required coherent collective action. They fostered the concepts of specialized labor, hierarchical administration, public works, and the very idea of a city as a living, breathing entity. This wasn't about imposing a specific political system, but about demonstrating the efficiency and resilience that comes from organized community. This provided the structure, the societal scaffolding, upon which all other advancements could be built and maintained. These weren't just disparate pieces of information, they formed an integrated curriculum designed to accelerate humanity past the most arduous stages of development. The Whisperers provided the intellectual kindling, the spark, and the initial fuel, allowing the fire of human ingenuity to catch hold and blaze brightly. But why? What were their ultimate long-term goals beyond simply getting us back on our feet? This, perhaps, is the most tantalizing part of our theory. The architects of the Veil had experienced a global cataclysm, a profound disruption that forced their disappearance, it stands to reason that the whisperers, their inheritors, would be driven by a desire to prevent a similar fate for humanity, or perhaps to prepare humanity for its own future challenges. One compelling goal is the preservation of knowledge. The architects of the Veil likely possessed a vast, sophisticated understanding of the universe, and the cataclysm threatened to erase it all. The Whisperers may have seen humanity not just as a species to be guided, but as a living library, a vessel for the re-emergence and eventual rediscovery of that lost knowledge. By teaching foundational principles, they weren't just building cities, they were building minds capable of eventually comprehending their own advanced sciences, mathematics, and philosophies. They were planting seeds for a far grander harvest. Another profound goal could be humanity's evolutionary acceleration. Perhaps the Whisperers viewed humanity as having immense potential, but needing a critical push to bypass millennia of slow, incremental discovery. By providing this, quote 20, they were essentially fast-tracking our development, allowing us to reach a state of self-awareness and technological capability much sooner. Was this for our own good, or part of a larger cosmic plan? Were we being groomed to become something more, to fulfill a specific role in the grand tapestry of existence? The idea that they allowed us, quote 21 Niesta, suggests a desire for genuine self-directed growth, free from the psychological dependency of overt mentorship. They wanted us to own our progress, to internalize the process of discovery, not just parrot their instructions. Consider the possibility that the Whisperers were not merely benevolent guides, but also custodians of a grand design. Perhaps they understood cycles of cosmic or geological change, anticipating future events that humanity, left to its own devices, would be ill-equipped to face. Their intervention might have been a long-term contingency plan, ensuring that a resilient, intelligent civilization would be ready when the next great challenge arose. This could explain the global synchronicity of their influence, preparing multiple nodes of advanced civilization, ensuring redundancy and diversity in their grand experiment. And what if the just, quote 22 itself, the very act of their disappearance, was part of this goal? By retreating, they forced humanity to stand on its own feet, to grapple with its own triumphs and failures, to develop its own ethics and philosophies. They provided the tools, but we had to build the future. This implies a profound trust, or perhaps a calculated risk in humanity's potential. They set the stage, then stepped back into the shadows, allowing the human drama to unfold, hoping we would eventually grow into the inheritors they envisioned. As we ponder these motivations, we begin to see the Whisperers not just as ancient benefactors, but as entities with a deep understanding of time, evolution, and the delicate balance between guidance and self-determination. Their legacy isn't in ruins or direct proclamations, but in the very fabric of our earliest civilizations, a testament to an unseen hand, a silent whisper that changed the course of human destiny. In our next chapter, we will delve deeper into the philosophical implications of this theory, exploring what it truly means for our understanding of human ingenuity, and what further fingerprints of the architects of the Veil might still be awaiting our discovery. Join us then as we continue to unravel the profound mysteries of our past. Welcome back, seekers of the unseen, to another compelling installment of dreamy mystery. we have journeyed through the astounding, almost instantaneous birth of civilization in Sumer, peered into the sudden architectural mastery of Egypt, and glimpsed the sophisticated urban planning of the Indus Valley and the enigmatic artistry of the Olmec. We've posited a radical alternative to the conventional narrative that humanity's dizzying ascent was not a solitary climb, but a guided reignition, orchestrated by the subtle hand of the whisperers, the inheritors of the architects of the veil. But now we must ask, how exactly did this hidden curriculum manifest? How did these silent mentors, these intellectual midwives, manage to compress millennia of trial and error into what appears, to our historical gaze, as a mere blink in the eye of geological time? How did they instill such foundational knowledge, mathematics, astronomy, metallurgy, social organization, without leaving behind overt monuments to their own existence? This, dear friends, is where the true genius of the whisperers and the depth of the veil truly reveals itself. Consider, if you will, the cornerstone of any advanced civilization, the ability to measure and predict. We speak, of course, of time and space, codified by mathematics and astronomy. The Sumerians, as we know, gifted us the sexagesimal system, a base 60 numerical system that still underpins our division of time, 60 seconds in a minute, 60 minutes in an hour, and angles, 360 degrees in a circle. Now pause and reflect. Why base 60? It is a highly composite number, divisible by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, 30, and 60, making it incredibly flexible for fractions and divisions. This is not the intuitive finger-counting simplicity of a base 10 system. This is a sophisticated, abstract construct seemingly plucked from the ether, fully formed and remarkably efficient from its very inception. Where are the crude predecessors? Where are the millennia of experimentation with base 5, base 12, base 20 systems that would logically lead to such an elegant yet complex solution? We find none. We find instead the perfection of an initial attempt. The same uncanny ability is mirrored in their astronomical observations and calendrical systems. The precision with which early civilizations tracked celestial movements, the solstices, equinoxes, and planetary cycles, is staggering. The Sumerian and later Babylonian astronomical tables, for instance, were incredibly accurate, capable of predicting eclipses and planetary positions with a degree of precision that seems utterly incongruous with the supposed rudimentary tools and knowledge of the era. How does a burgeoning civilization, grappling with the very basics of survival, suddenly develop the capacity for such sustained, meticulous, and mathematically complex observation? It requires not only keen eyesight and patience, but also an advanced understanding of geometry, trigonometry, even if protoforms, and the conceptual framework to record, analyze, and extrapolate data over vast periods. Here, we propose, is where the Whisperers' hidden curriculum truly shone. Their method was not overt instruction, not the building of grand schools or the writing of textbooks that would undoubtedly betray their presence. Instead, their influence was far more subtle, akin to an intellectual acupuncture, strategically stimulating nascent human genius at critical inflection points. Imagine, if you will, an individual, a proto-priest, a chieftain, a village elder, prone to deep contemplation, perhaps wrestling with the mysteries of the shifting seasons or the patterns of the night sky. The Whisperers, through means we can only speculate upon, perhaps through vivid dreams, sudden intuitive leaps, or the strategic placement of objects or information that sparked profound insight, would seed the foundational principles. Picture a moment of profound revelation, a Sumerian observer gazing at the heavens, suddenly grasping the elegant divisibility of 360 degrees, or the cyclical nature of the lunar calendar with an almost divine clarity. This wasn't just a discovery, it was a recollection, a sudden unlocking of a pre-existing blueprint. The Whisperers acted as catalysts, not creators, igniting the spark of understanding rather than simply pouring knowledge into empty vessels. They provided the conceptual framework, the underlying mathematical principles, allowing human ingenuity to then build upon this robust foundation with astonishing speed. This, quote 29, this lack of a visible, incremental learning curve is perhaps the most compelling fingerprint of the Whisperers. Where are the thousands of years of flawed calendars, the crude attempts at numerical systems that eventually evolved into the sexagesimal? We observe no such protracted, arduous process. Instead, we see an immediate, functional sophistication. It's like finding a perfectly engineered internal combustion engine in a Stone Age archaeological dig, with no evidence of the preceding steam engines, water wheels, or even rudimentary levers that would logically lead to its development. The engine simply is. And this pattern, we must reiterate, is not an isolated phenomenon. Cast your mind to the Indus Valley civilization, specifically to cities like Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. Here, we encounter urban planning of astonishing foresight, grid-patterned streets, sophisticated drainage and sewage systems, public baths, and standardized brick sizes. These were not organic settlements that grew haphazardly over centuries. They were meticulously planned and executed from their very foundations, exhibiting a level of civil engineering and public health understanding that would not be replicated in many parts of the world for thousands of years. The uniformity of their weights and measures across vast distances, the precision of their construction, these are not the hallmarks of a nascent society fumbling its way towards order. These are the echoes of a guiding hand providing a master plan, a template for efficient and sustainable urban living. How did the Whisperers achieve this global coordination? Was there a central directive, a network of agents operating independently but towards a common goal? We believe it was more akin to a distributed network, a common thread of fundamental principles woven into the fabric of various emerging cultures. They understood that while the surface manifestations might differ, cuneiform in Mesopotamia, hieroglyphs in Egypt, the undeciphered script of the Indus, the symbols of the Olmec, the underlying abstract principles of organization, measurement and communication were universal. They provided the algorithms allowing humanity to write its own code, adapted to local resources and cultural nuances. This brings us back to the motivations of the Whisperers. Why such subtlety? Why the veil? We contend that their goal was not to rule, not to dominate, but to empower. By remaining hidden, by allowing humanity to believe these breakthroughs were entirely its own, they fostered a sense of self-determination, a belief in human potential that might have been stifled had a superior, visible race dictated every step. They were the silent gardeners, tending to the fragile sapling of human civilization, pruning where necessary, providing unseen nourishment, ensuring its robust growth without overshadowing its inherent strength. They accelerated our journey, yes, but they allowed us to walk it ourselves, to stumble and rise, to claim our triumphs as our own. The scale of their ambition, then, was truly breathtaking. To reseed knowledge across continents, to nudge multiple disparate cultures towards similar foundational advancements, all while remaining utterly undetected by the historical record. It speaks to an unparalleled mastery of influence and discretion. They prioritized the essential, the building blocks, the mathematics that allowed for monumental construction and accurate calendrics, the metallurgy that transformed raw materials into tools and art, the social structures that fostered cooperation and stability. These were the core competencies necessary for humanity to not only survive but to thrive, to eventually rediscover the lost wisdom of the architects of the Vale, perhaps even to prepare for a grander design yet to be revealed. But what happens when these guiding whispers fade? What happens when humanity, having absorbed these foundational principles, begins to deviate, to forget, or to misuse the knowledge so subtly imparted? What further fingerprints might we discover that reveal not just the initial seeding, but the ongoing, perhaps even corrective influence of the whisperers through the subsequent millennia? Join us next time as we delve deeper into the long shadow cast by the architects of the Vale, and explore the tantalizing possibility that their influence extends far beyond the dawn of civilization, touching even the most unexpected corners of our shared human story. The mystery, as you are beginning to realize, only deepens with every layer we peel away. Welcome back, truth seekers, to Dreamy Mystery, where we peel back the layers of conventional history, isn't it? Last time, we began to uncover the profound implications of the quote 32, that carefully curated syllabus of foundational knowledge subtly imparted by the whisperers to nascent human civilizations. We spoke of Rawls, quote 33, of abstract thought systems seeded into the fertile ground of early human minds. But today, we ask, what exactly was in that curriculum? And how did its sudden implantation transform the very trajectory of our species? Consider, if you will, the dizzying speed with which core concepts, utterly essential for complex society, materialized in places like Sumer. We aren't talking about slow, incremental discoveries here, the kind that naturally emerge over millennia of trial and error. No, we are observing in the archaeological record the perfection of initial attempts, the sudden appearance of fully formed systems that seem to defy the arduous process of human invention. This, dear friends, is where the whisperer's fingerprints become not just visible, but starkly undeniable. Let's begin with one of the most fundamental pillars of any advanced civilization, mathematics. We often attribute the sexagesimal system, the base 60 counting system that gave us 60 minutes in an hour, 360 degrees in a circle, and so much more, to the Sumerians, and rightly so in terms of its historical emergence. But pause for a moment. This isn't a simple base 10 system, isn't it? It's a complex, highly divisible system, incredibly efficient for fractions and astronomical calculations. How does a society barely emerging from Neolithic simplicity suddenly conceive and universally adopt such an elegant, sophisticated mathematical framework? Where is the protracted struggle, the countless dead ends, the primitive precursors that should litter the archaeological record of such a monumental intellectual leap? We don't see it. We see it instead appearing almost fully formed, a ready-made toolkit for abstract thought and practical application. The whisperers, we posit, didn't just teach counting, they instilled a system, They didn't merely show humans how to tally, they implanted the very conceptual architecture of a mathematical language, a framework designed for precision, for measurement, for the very blueprint of civilization. This wasn't discovery, it was revelation. It was the intellectual acupuncture needle finding the precise point to unlock a complex cognitive structure, allowing humanity to build not just huts, but ziggurats, not just simple trade, but complex economic systems. From mathematics, we naturally flow into astronomy and calendrical systems. The precision of early Mesopotamian astronomical observations, their uncanny ability to track celestial movements, predict eclipses, and establish a functional calendar, is astounding. These weren't idle stargazers, were they? They were meticulous record keepers, creating tables and charts that required not only keen observation, but also sophisticated mathematical models. How did they achieve such accuracy without centuries of prior, less perfect attempts? Without the gradual accumulation of data and the slow refinement of observational tools? Think of the practical implications. A reliable calendar tied to the cycles of the sun and moon was absolutely crucial for agricultural societies in the Fertile Crescent. It dictated planting seasons, harvest times, flood predictions, the very rhythm of life and death along the Tigris and Euphrates. This wasn't just academic curiosity, it was survival, and the knowledge, again, seems to arrive with a remarkable degree of sophistication, a testament to a guiding hand that understood the profound interplay between celestial mechanics and terrestrial prosperity. The Whisperers, understanding the fragile balance of emerging communities, provided the cosmic clockwork necessary for their stability and growth. They didn't just point to the stars, they explained their dance, their patterns, their influence. Then there's metallurgy. Oh, the magic of turning dull ore into gleaming metal, into tools, weapons, and symbols of power. The transition from stone to copper, then to bronze, and eventually to iron, marks pivotal eras in human development. But again, the question arises, how did this complex knowledge, involving mining, smelting, alloying, and casting, spread and develop with such apparent ease? The process of extracting metal from ore is not intuitive. It requires specific temperatures, knowledge of different materials, and a sophisticated understanding of chemical reactions that would take generations of accidental discovery and deliberate experimentation to master. Yet, we see the relatively swift adoption of bronze technology across vast regions, often with remarkably similar techniques. Was this purely independent invention and rapid diffusion, or was there a subtle, pervasive network, the Whisperers, demonstrating, guiding, and perhaps even seeding the initial understanding of how to coax metal from rock? Imagine a whisperer, not overtly teaching, but perhaps leaving a perfectly smelted ingot near a human settlement, or subtly influencing a dream with the precise sequence of steps required for alloying copper and tin. These aren't overt acts, are they? These are the subtle nudges, the intellectual acupuncture at its finest, accelerating humanity's technological curve by millennia. The Dean quote 35. In the early phases of metallurgy is a profound clue, suggesting a pre-existing template rather than a purely organic trial-and-error evolution. And what of urban planning and sophisticated infrastructure? Look at the grid-patterned cities of the Indus Valley, Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, with their advanced drainage systems, public baths, and standardized brick sizes. These aren't organic growths of villages, these are planned cities, conceived with a foresight and engineering acumen that belies their supposed nascent status. Or consider the intricate irrigation networks of Mesopotamia, diverting river waters to nourish vast fields, requiring not just brute force, but a deep understanding of hydraulics and civil engineering. How did early human societies, still grappling with basic survival, manage to orchestrate such grand-scale projects, demanding coordinated labor, advanced surveying techniques, and a conceptual understanding of urban design? Was it simply a flash of genius, replicated independently across continents? Or was it the whisperers, imparting fundamental principles of resource management, population density, and public health? A hidden curriculum for building not just settlements, but sustainable, thriving civilizations. They provided, in essence, the master blueprints, allowing humanity to construct enduring monuments to its own ingenuity while remaining hidden in the shadows. So, how did the Whisperers implement this curriculum? We've touched on intellectual acupuncture, the seeding of profound insights into receptive minds. But let's delve deeper. Imagine the earliest sages or priests of these emerging societies. Were they simply wise elders, or were some of them individuals who had experienced profound, almost visionary dreams, suddenly grasping complex concepts they had never encountered before? Perhaps a whisperer, cloaked in anonymity, might subtly guide a leader to a specific mineral deposit, or demonstrate a new agricultural technique that yields unprecedented results. Their influence wouldn't be overt command, but rather a gentle, persuasive current, guiding the river of human development without ever revealing its source. This efficiency, this bypassing of millennia of empirical trial and error is key. It allowed early human societies to establish a foundational stability at an unprecedented rate. Without this accelerated learning curve, would we have seen the rapid population growth, the specialization of labor, the explosion of cultural and artistic expression that followed? It's highly doubtful. The Whisperers, in their wisdom, understood that certain core competencies were non-negotiable for humanity to survive and thrive beyond a tribal existence. They provided these tools not as a crutch, but as a launch pad. The impact of this accelerated learning was profound. It didn't just give humanity knowledge, it shaped our very perception of ourselves and our place in the cosmos. Think of the consistent themes in early mythologies around the world. The, quote, 40 who descended from the heavens or arrived from across the waters, teaching humanity the secrets of agriculture, writing, and civilization. Are these merely allegories, or are they echoes, distorted by time and oral tradition, of the Whisperer's subtle interventions? Could these bringers of knowledge be the faint memories of those who received and then disseminated the hidden curriculum? Humanity, believing these gifts to be divine inspiration or its own brilliant invention, embraced them wholeheartedly, embedding them deeply into the fabric of their societies. This was perhaps a deliberate strategy by the Whisperers to foster self-determination while ensuring the knowledge took root firmly and reverently. The absence of struggle in these foundational areas allowed resources, human ingenuity, time, and labor to be directed elsewhere, enabling the rapid development of art, religion, social stratification, and even early forms of governance. It's a cascading effect, isn't it? A single, well-placed intellectual seed blossoms into an entire garden of civilization. But what happens when humanity deviates from, or perhaps misuses, the knowledge so carefully imparted? What happens when the path diverges from the whisperer's grand design? These are the questions that keep us up at night, the threads we will pull in our next exploration. For the veil, while thin, is not entirely transparent, and the motivations of our ancient guides remain in many ways an enduring mystery. Join us next time as we continue our journey into the subtle influence that shaped our world, perhaps more profoundly than we have ever dared to imagine. Welcome back, fellow seekers of truth, to Dreamy Mystery, where we dare to challenge the bedrock of conventional history. We've journeyed through the astounding dawn of civilization, marveling at the dizzying speed with which humanity, seemingly from nowhere, mastered the intricacies of urban planning, advanced mathematics, and the very fabric of social order. We posited that this wasn't mere happenstance, but the deliberate subtle hand of the whisperers, the inheritors of the architects of the veil, quietly guiding our ancestors through a hidden curriculum, an intellectual acupuncture that sparked genius across continents. But here's the crucial question that begs our attention today. Did the whisperer's influence simply cease once the first ziggurat touched the sky, or the first cuneiform tablet was inscribed? Was their mission accomplished with the establishment of those initial, improbable societies? We contend that the veil, far from dissipating, merely shifted, becoming even more translucent, more insidious in its enduring presence, weaving itself into the very tapestry of our evolving story. The fingerprints we seek now are not just at the genesis of civilization, but in its persistent anomalies, its inexplicable surges, and its miraculous recoveries. Consider, if you will, the great ebbs and flows of human history, those periods of profound cultural flourishing often followed by cataclysmic disruptions, what we colloquially term, quote, 43. Think of the Bronze Age collapse, a mysterious, widespread societal breakdown that plunged vast swathes of the ancient world into centuries of illiteracy and fragmentation. Or the fall of the Western Roman Empire, extinguishing a beacon of organized knowledge and governance, ushering in a millennium often characterized by intellectual stagnation. Yet, time and again, from the ashes of these collapses, knowledge didn't just re-emerge, it often re-emerged with an uncanny resilience, sometimes even advanced beyond its former state, as if preserved in a hidden vault, awaiting the opportune moment for release. How do we explain this? How, in a world devoid of printing presses, digital archives, or even widespread literacy, did critical scientific, philosophical, and architectural knowledge manage to survive the wholesale destruction of libraries, the scattering of scholars, and the breakdown of every societal institution designed to preserve it? Was it merely the diligent work of isolated monks and scribes, copying manuscripts by flickering candlelight? Or was there a more profound, more active mechanism at play, a continuation of the whisperer's grand strategy to keep humanity's living library intact? We propose that these periods of decline were not merely setbacks, but rather crucibles. Within these crucibles, the whisperers, ever vigilant behind their veil, subtly orchestrated the preservation of essential knowledge, not always through direct intervention, but by ensuring that key individuals, communities, or even entire cultural mindsets were primed to safeguard and eventually rekindle the flame. They might have inspired the formation of monastic orders, guided the migration of scholars carrying precious scrolls, or even influenced the dreams and visions of leaders to protect certain intellectual traditions. Their role shifted from initial seeding to careful custodianship, pruning back the overgrowth of ignorance and nurturing the fragile shoots of wisdom. And then, observe the subsequent renaissances. The Islamic Golden Age, emerging from the relative obscurity of the Arabian Peninsula, suddenly absorbed, translated, and expanded upon the cumulative knowledge of Greek, Roman, Persian, and Indian civilizations with breathtaking speed and sophistication. Centuries later, Europe's own Renaissance saw a resurgence of classical learning, but it wasn't just a rediscovery. It was a reinterpretation and a launch pad for entirely new scientific and artistic paradigms. These weren't simply natural cycles. They were accelerations, moments when the quote 45 seemed to receive a fresh infusion, a new chapter unveiled. But the Whisperer's influence, we believe, extended far beyond the preservation and reseeding of practical knowledge. Let us turn our gaze to the realm of abstract thought, to the very questions that define our humanity: ethics, morality, purpose, and our place in the cosmos. Consider the Axial Age, that remarkable period between 800 and 200 BCE, when, independently across the globe, profound new philosophical and religious systems emerged almost simultaneously. From Confucius and Laozi in China to the Buddha in India, the Zoroaster in Persia, the Hebrew prophets in the Near East, and the Greek philosophers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, all grappling with universal concepts of human suffering, justice, enlightenment, and the nature of reality. Is it a mere coincidence that such a concentrated burst of revolutionary thought, fundamentally shaping the ethical and spiritual foundations of virtually every major civilization, occurred within such a narrow historical window, across cultures with minimal direct contact? Or does this represent another, even more sophisticated layer of, quote 46, a global, synchronized effort by the Whisperers to guide humanity's moral and philosophical development? They had accelerated our material progress. Perhaps they were also accelerating our spiritual and ethical maturation, preparing us for the responsibilities that come with advanced capabilities. This wasn't about imposing a single dogma, mind you. The beauty of the Axial Age is its diversity of expression, yet its convergence on universal humanistic principles. This aligns perfectly with the Whisperer's established methodology. Subtle influence, allowing humanity to discover and internalize these truths as their own, fostering genuine self-determination, while subtly steering the collective consciousness towards a shared, higher understanding. They weren't dictating beliefs. They were posing the right questions, inspiring the right insights, ensuring that the seeds of profound introspection were sown in fertile minds worldwide. And what of the scientific revolutions that periodically erupt throughout history, seemingly out of nowhere, propelling humanity forward with unprecedented velocity? The sudden emergence of calculus by Newton and Leibniz almost simultaneously, the Copernican revolution, challenging millennia of geocentric thought, the Enlightenment, with its radical new ideas about human rights and governance, the Industrial Revolution, fundamentally reshaping our relationship with technology and the environment. These were not slow, incremental steps. they were often paradigm shifts, intellectual earthquakes that rattled the foundations of established knowledge. Could it be that the whisperers, observing humanity's progress, occasionally provided nudges, offering insights or solutions through the receptive minds of brilliant individuals? Perhaps a particular problem, long unsolved, suddenly yields to an elegant solution born from an Gyasek, quote 47, or a quote 48. We are not suggesting direct dictation, but rather the subtle presentation of a puzzle piece, a missing link, or a new perspective that allows a genius to suddenly connect disparate ideas into a coherent, revolutionary whole. There, quote 49 isn't static. It's dynamic, responsive, adapting to humanity's evolving needs and capacities. The purpose of this persistent influence, then, extends beyond mere receding. It speaks to a long-term, multi-millennial plan. If humanity is indeed a living library for the architect's lost knowledge, then the whisperers are its quiet librarians, not just cataloguing, but actively cultivating our capacity to read, understand, and apply that knowledge. Their goals are not short-sighted. They are preparing us not just for the challenges of our immediate world, but for grander, perhaps cosmic responsibilities yet unknown. They are ensuring that humanity, as it matures, possesses not only the technological prowess, but also the ethical framework and the philosophical depth to wield it wisely. The ultimate fate of the architects of the Veil and the full extent of their whisperers' objectives remains shrouded in profound mystery. But their enduring echoes, their subtle fingerprints across the vast expanse of human history, suggest a continuous, patient vigil. They are the unseen hands shaping our trajectory, the quiet guardians of a legacy far older and grander than we dare to imagine. So, as we peer into the annals of history, do we see merely the chaotic, self-driven evolution of a species, or do we begin to discern the faint recurring patterns of an intelligence guiding us from behind the veil? We invite you to re-examine those historical moments, those sudden leaps, those inexplicable synchronicity through this new lens. For in these enduring echoes, we might just find the next clue to understanding who we truly are and who we were always meant to become. Next time, we will delve deeper into specific historical anomalies, looking for the telltale signs of the veil thinning, of the whisperer's influence becoming almost palpable, almost undeniable, in events and discoveries that defy conventional explanation. Prepare to question everything you thought you knew. Welcome back, truth seekers, to Dreamy Mystery, where we peel back the layers of accepted history and peer into the shadows of what might be. Last time, we journeyed far beyond the nascent cities of Sumer, tracing the subtle, almost imperceptible fingerprints of the whisperers across the globe, from the planned metropolises of the Indus Valley to the monumental wonders of ancient Egypt and the enigmatic Olmec heads of Mesoamerica. We posited that their influence wasn't a one-off event, a mere reseeding of knowledge after a cataclysm, but a sustained, multi-millennial project, a guiding hand subtly shaping humanity's trajectory through what we call intellectual acupuncture. But how, you might ask, does such a subtle influence persist across millennia, through empires rising and falling, through dark ages and glorious renaissances? How do anonymous agents, operating from behind a carefully constructed veil, continue to guide the very intellectual and moral fabric of an entire species without ever revealing themselves, This, my friends, is where the mystery deepens, where the whisper becomes almost a silent, insistent hum beneath the cacophony of recorded history. Consider, if you will, the Axial Age, that astonishing period roughly between 800 and 200 BCE. Across disparate continents, seemingly unconnected cultures simultaneously gave birth to profound new ethical systems, philosophical frameworks, and spiritual traditions that continue to shape our world today. In China, Confucius and Laozi laid the groundwork for complex social harmony and individual enlightenment. In India, the Upanishads emerged, followed by the teachings of Buddha and Mahavira, redefining existence and liberation. In the Near East, the Hebrew prophets articulated monotheistic principles and a covenant with the divine. In Greece, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle pioneered rational inquiry, logic, and the foundations of Western philosophy. Is this mere coincidence? A spontaneous, synchronized blossoming of human consciousness across thousands of miles without any apparent cross-cultural transmission? Or could it be another manifestation of the Whisperer's grand design, a critical phase in humanity's accelerated evolution? If their initial goal was to establish a living library of knowledge, then surely that library must contain not just the blueprints for cities and the equations for the cosmos, but also the very operating system for moral and ethical governance. A brilliant civilization, after all, is not merely one that builds tall buildings or understands the stars. It is one that grapples with justice, compassion, and the meaning of existence. We submit to you that the Axial Age represents a deliberate, orchestrated moral acupuncture. The Whisperers, understanding the inherent complexities and dangers of a rapidly advancing species, likely recognized the imperative of fostering a robust ethical foundation. Imagine the subtle nudges, the compelling dreams, the intuitive leaps that led individuals like Siddhartha Gautama or Zarathustra to their epiphanies. Picture the quiet influence that steered the dialogues of ancient Greek philosophers towards universal truths, or imbued the words of the prophets with such resonant power. These weren't direct instructions, mind you, but rather the strategic placement of seed ideas within fertile minds, allowing humanity to discover these profound concepts and internalize them as its own, thereby ensuring their genuine adoption and enduring power. The absence of struggle we observed in early technological leaps finds its echo here in the seemingly effortless emergence of these foundational ethical systems, systems of staggering complexity and enduring relevance, often articulated with a startling clarity from their very inception. And the story doesn't end there, does it? Fast forward through the ebb and flow of empires, through the so-called Garces est quote 57, where much ancient knowledge seemed lost, only to re-emerge with renewed vigour. Was it truly lost, or merely carefully preserved, guarded by unseen hands, waiting for the opportune moment for its reintroduction? The Islamic Golden Age, a crucible of intellectual flourishing, saw the preservation and advancement of Greek, Roman, and Indian knowledge, alongside groundbreaking innovations in mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. Was this a natural resurgence, or another carefully orchestrated chapter in the Whisperer's ongoing curriculum? Then came the European Renaissance, a period of breathtaking artistic, scientific, and intellectual revival. Suddenly, lost classical texts reappeared, inspiring new modes of thought. New artistic techniques, like perspective, revolutionized painting. The scientific revolution followed, ushering in an era of unprecedented discovery. Copernicus, Galileo, Newton. These titans of intellect fundamentally altered our understanding of the universe. Were their groundbreaking insights purely the product of individual genius? Or were they too beneficiaries of those subtle nudges, those puzzle pieces strategically placed by the whisperers? Consider the sheer improbability of certain discoveries. This sudden, intuitive leap that allows a Newton to formulate the laws of universal gravitation, or an Einstein to conceive of relativity. We laud these as products of extraordinary human minds, and rightly so. But what if these minds were subtly guided, subtly primed, given the right conceptual tools at precisely the right moment? What if the apple falling was not just an observation, but a carefully curated moment of insight, a catalyst delivered by an unseen hand? The whisperers, remember, are masters of the indirect, the suggestive, the almost imperceptible. Their influence is designed to feel like pure, unadulterated human genius, ensuring that humanity retains its sense of agency and ownership over its own advancements. This brings us to the very nature of the veil itself. How do they maintain such a profound level of anonymity across millennia? We speculate that their methods involve a deep understanding of human psychology, social dynamics, and perhaps even the very fabric of reality itself. Their interventions are not overt demonstrations of power, but rather the manipulation of probabilities, the subtle redirection of thought, the strategic illumination of a path that appears to us as entirely self-generated. They might influence dreams, inspire intuition, guide research, or even ensure the survival of crucial texts through periods of historical upheaval. Their technology, if we can even call it that, is not about grand machines or visible structures, but about the exquisite mastery of information, influence, and the art of remaining utterly unseen. Perhaps they operate through a network of custodians, individuals who, consciously or unconsciously, serve as conduits for their influence. These might be the proto-priests of Sumer, the philosophers of the Axial Age, the scholars of the Golden Age, or the scientists of the Enlightenment. They are not controlled puppets, but rather highly receptive minds, attuned to the subtle currents of insight that the whisperers are so adept at generating. The intellectual acupuncture concept is key here, stimulating specific points in the collective human consciousness to release a torrent of self-discovery. The ultimate grand design, then, begins to take on a clearer, yet still profoundly mysterious shape. It's not just about preserving the knowledge of the architects of the veil, nor solely about accelerating human evolution for its own sake. It seems to be about preparing humanity for something much larger, much more profound. We spoke of a global cataclysm that brought down the architects. Could it be that the whisperers, as their inheritors, are guiding us towards a state of collective resilience and intelligence necessary to face a similar future event? Are we being primed to be not just a quote 67, but a quote 68 capable of navigating future cosmic or geological challenges? Are they fostering a species capable of understanding and potentially even preventing such future cataclysms? The implications of this theory are frankly staggering. If true, it fundamentally reshapes our understanding of human history, challenging the very notion of purely self-driven progress. Does it diminish our achievements to suggest an unseen hand? We argue Quite the contrary, it reframes them. Our capacity to receive, interpret, and build upon these subtle nudges, to integrate complex knowledge and profound ethical systems into our societies, is itself a testament to our extraordinary potential. It suggests a collaborative evolution, a partnership with an ancient intelligence that recognized our nascent spark and sought to fan it into a roaring flame. But the question remains, what is the full extent of this partnership? What are the Whisperer's ultimate objectives beyond reseeding and guiding? And what happens when, or if, the veil finally thins enough for us to perceive them directly? Could such a revelation shatter our understanding of ourselves? Or could it unlock a new era of conscious collaboration? These are the profound questions that continue to reverberate through the corridors of dreamy mystery, inviting you to question everything you thought you knew. Join us next time as we delve into the potential future implications of this ancient guidance and ask whether we are truly ready for the answers that might lie just beyond the veil. Welcome back, fellow seekers of truth, to another journey into the depths of dreamy mystery. We've traversed the Fertile Crescent, marvelled at the impossible speed of Sumerian innovation, and glimpsed the global echoes of an ancient guiding hand. We've established the what, an accelerated trajectory for human civilization, orchestrated by the enigmatic Whisperers, the inheritors of the architects of the veil. But now a more pressing, perhaps even more intriguing question demands our attention. How? How precisely did these unseen custodians manage such a staggering feat of intellectual midwifery without ever revealing themselves? How did they perform this, quote, 70 seeding foundational principles into the burgeoning human mind without leaving so much as a discernible footprint in the archaeological record? This is where the true genius of the Whisperers and the profound challenge to our conventional understanding of history truly lies. We are not talking about overt intervention, colossal structures that scream, quote 71, or even clear written instructions. No, their methods were far more subtle, far more insidious in their elegance, woven seamlessly into the very fabric of human experience and discovery. Consider for a moment the sheer audacity of their undertaking. To guide a species from rudimentary hunter-gatherer societies to complex urban centres, complete with writing, metallurgy, mathematics, and intricate social stratification, in what amounts to a blink in the eye of geological time, without once shattering the illusion of human autonomy. It's a masterclass in indirect influence, a symphony of nudges and suggestions rather than commands. First, let us delve deeper into the concept of intellectual acupuncture. We've spoken of seeding ideas, but what form did these seeds take? We propose that the Whisperers operated primarily on the edge of human consciousness, targeting receptive minds with uncanny precision. Think of those pivotal figures in early human history, the proto-priests who first charted the stars, the shamans who communed with the unseen, the early philosophers who grappled with the nature of existence, the nascent engineers who envisioned the first monumental structures. These were not just individuals of extraordinary genius. They were, we speculate, the prime conduits for the Whisperers' subtle interventions. Imagine the sudden, inexplicable, quote 72, moment that strikes an inventor, the profound intuitive flash that reorganizes a scholar's understanding, the vivid dream that inspires a prophet to forge a new ethical code. We often attribute these to divine inspiration, sheer luck, or the mysterious workings of the subconscious. But what if they were, in fact, carefully calibrated impulses, gentle whispers on the wind of thought, delivered directly to the minds most primed to receive and act upon them? The whisperers, with their advanced understanding of neurobiology and collective consciousness, might have possessed the ability to subtly manipulate synaptic pathways, to enhance pattern recognition, or even to induce states of heightened creativity and insight. They weren't implanting fully formed blueprints, mind you, but rather the catalysts for discovery, the missing pieces of a complex puzzle that, once found, allowed humanity to assemble the rest. This isn't mind control, it's intellectual suggestion, a delicate nudge that allows the human mind to believe it arrived at the conclusion entirely on its own. But their influence extended beyond the purely cognitive. We must also consider the subtle manipulation of environmental factors and resource availability. Humanity's progress has always been inextricably linked to its environment and the resources it could harness. What if some of those, quote 73, or opportune environmental shifts weren't so lucky or opportune after all? We are not suggesting the whisperers moved mountains with the flick of a wrist, but rather that their advanced knowledge of geology, meteorology, and ecology allowed for incredibly precise, localized, and almost imperceptible alterations. Picture this: a specific vein of copper or tin ore, crucial for the nascent Bronze Age, suddenly becomes more accessible due to a minor naturally occurring seismic shift, or an erosion pattern subtly encouraged by slightly altered weather cycles. Or perhaps the migration routes of animals essential for early human sustenance were gently steered towards developing communities, ensuring a stable food supply necessary for the leisure required for innovation. These would be changes so minor, so within the realm of natural variability, that they would be utterly indistinguishable from pure chance. Yet, viewed through the lens of accelerated development, these coincidences begin to accumulate, forming a pattern too convenient to ignore. They weren't creating resources out of thin air. They were merely ensuring the right resources were available at the right time, for the right people, to foster the next crucial leap in human technological and social evolution. And then there's the profound impact on social and cultural evolution, the hidden curriculum. How do nascent societies transition from tribal skirmishes to complex legal systems, from rudimentary belief systems to profound philosophical inquiries? We've seen the astonishing ethical and philosophical breakthroughs of the axial age occurring almost simultaneously across disparate cultures. Was this merely a spontaneous global awakening, or was it another testament to the whisperer's subtle guidance? Perhaps they subtly amplified certain cultural traits that fostered cooperation over conflict, encouraged the development of abstract thought, or subtly discouraged destructive behaviors that would have stifled progress. Think of the emergence of early legal codes like Hammurabi's, or the philosophical inquiries of ancient Greece and India. These weren't just random occurrences. They represented a fundamental shift in how humans organized themselves and understood their place in the cosmos. The whisperers might have, through those receptive minds, introduced concepts of justice, universal ethics, and the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, embedding these principles into the very foundations of emerging civilizations. They weren't dictating laws, they were inspiring the idea of law, the need for justice, the quest for wisdom. These mechanisms, intellectual acupuncture, subtle environmental nudges, and cultural guidance, all served a singular overarching purpose: the whisperers. Grand design. Humanity, as we've discussed, was not merely a pet project, but a, quote 76, for the architect's lost knowledge and a living ark being prepared for challenges yet to come. The goal was not simply to survive, but to thrive, to evolve, to become self-sufficient and resilient enough to face whatever cosmic, geological, or perhaps even existential threats lay dormant in the future. What are these threats? We can only speculate. Perhaps the same cataclysm that brought down the architect of the Veil is cyclical, awaiting its next manifestation. Or perhaps there are challenges beyond our current comprehension, requiring a species of ingenuity and adaptability that only accelerated evolution could achieve. This brings us to one of the most tantalizing and frankly unnerving prospects: the thinning of the veil. If the Whisperers have been operating behind this profound anonymity for millennia, subtly guiding our development, what happens when humanity finally reaches a point where that veil begins to thin? Are we approaching a stage in our evolution where the Whisperers might consider a more direct, albeit still carefully managed revelation? Imagine a future where the eureka moments become more frequent, where the intuitive flashes are almost universally recognized, where the subtle environmental nudges are so perfectly aligned with our needs that we begin to question the very nature of chance. What if humanity, through its own scientific and spiritual advancements, begins to develop the capacity to perceive the Whisperers directly, not as ethereal beings, but as the incredibly advanced ancient architects of our accelerated journey? Are we ready for such a revelation? What would it mean for our understanding of our own history, our own achievements, our very identity as a species? Would it shatter our sense of autonomy, or would it open up a new, breathtaking chapter of cosmic collaboration? This thinning of the veil isn't necessarily about a sudden, dramatic unveiling. It could be a gradual process, a slow dawning of awareness as our collective consciousness expands and our scientific instruments become sophisticated enough to detect the subtle energies and patterns of influence that have always been present. This is not merely a hypothetical. It is, we believe, the ultimate trajectory of the Whisperer's grand design. They have fostered us, guided us, and now, perhaps, they are preparing us for a future where the student finally meets the teacher, not as a subservient, but as a peer, ready to take its place among the stars. The implications are staggering, challenging every historical narrative, every origin story, and every assumption about our unique human journey. Next, we will begin to explore specific historical moments, periods of unusual acceleration, inexplicable technological leaps, or profound philosophical shifts, and examine them through the lens of these Whisperer mechanisms. Were the megalithic builders of Göbekli Tepe, for instance, early recipients of intellectual acupuncture? Did the sudden mastery of agriculture in the Fertile Crescent involve subtle environmental engineering? Join us as we continue to peel back the layers of established history, revealing the hidden currents that have truly shaped our world. The truth, as always, is far stranger and more wondrous than fiction. Welcome back, truth seekers, to another deep dive into the labyrinthine corridors of our forgotten past on dreamy mystery. We left you, if you recall, with a rather audacious proposition the very veil that has concealed the architects and their whisperer descendants for millennia is beginning to thin. A provocative thought, isn't it? But what does this truly mean? And more importantly, why now? Are we merely indulging in fanciful speculation, or are there tangible tremors beneath the surface of our collective reality, signalling a profound shift in humanity's relationship with its ancient guides? Let us be clear. When we speak of a thinning veil, we are not envisioning some dramatic, instantaneous tearing of the fabric of reality, a sudden, blinding revelation that would shatter our world overnight. No, the whisperers, as we have meticulously observed, operate with a precision and subtlety that transcends our conventional understanding of intervention. Their methods are akin to intellectual acupuncture, not a blunt surgical strike. Therefore, the thinning of the veil is a gradual, almost imperceptible process, a slow translucence, if you will, allowing faint glimmers of their existence to pierce through the carefully constructed illusion of spontaneous human ingenuity. Consider it a shift in the ambient hum of our reality. For eons, that hum was a steady, almost silent drone, allowing humanity to believe its rapid ascent was entirely its own doing. Now, however, the frequency is subtly changing. We are not talking about alien spacecraft landing on the White House lawn, or ancient entities materializing in our living rooms. Instead, imagine a growing resonance in our collective consciousness, a heightened sensitivity to patterns, anomalies, and unexplained phenomena that, for so long, we have either dismissed as myth, categorized as error, or simply lacked the conceptual framework to comprehend. Why this shift? Why would the custodians, who have so diligently maintained their profound anonymity, now allow even a hint of their presence to surface? We posit several compelling reasons, each interconnected and pointing towards a critical juncture in human history. Firstly, humanity itself has reached a peculiar precipice. We stand at the threshold of unprecedented technological advancement, capable of both incredible creation and catastrophic destruction. Our global interconnectedness, while fostering a sense of shared experience, also magnifies our divisions and accelerates the pace of our existential challenges. From climate change to potential resource depletion, from the ethical dilemmas posed by artificial intelligence to the simmering geopolitical tensions that threaten global stability, we face a crucible of self-made trials. Perhaps the whisperers recognize that the stakes are simply too high for humanity to navigate these complexities entirely unaided, or, more accurately, entirely unaware of the deeper currents guiding its development. Secondly, our own burgeoning scientific capabilities are beginning to inadvertently, or perhaps inevitably, brush against the edges of the veil. Consider the recent strides in quantum physics, challenging our very perception of reality and consciousness, or the increasing sophistication of archaeological techniques, unearthing anomalies that defy conventional timelines. The meticulous analysis of ancient texts through advanced linguistic algorithms, revealing layers of meaning previously obscured. The very tools we have developed to understand our world are now becoming sophisticated enough to detect the subtle fingerprints of a guiding hand, to discern the faint whispers in the historical record. As our ability to process vast data sets grows, so too does our capacity to identify statistical improbabilities, patterns that suggest design rather than pure chance in the winding river of human history. Think of the out-of-place artifacts, the U-parts that occasionally surface, challenging established archaeological paradigms. While often debunked or recontextualized, a persistent few continue to baffle, hinting at technologies or knowledge far predating their supposed historical context. Could these be accidental slips, or perhaps intentional, almost provocative breadcrumbs left behind as the veil thins, testing our readiness to question the established narrative? Consider the precision of certain megalithic structures, the astronomical alignments, the mastery of stone cutting that still mystifies engineers today. Are these just the peak of ancient human ingenuity, or echoes of a more profound, accelerated learning curve facilitated by a hidden curriculum? Furthermore, the living ark concept we introduced earlier becomes critically relevant here. If humanity is indeed being prepared as a vessel for preserving knowledge and genetic diversity against future, unknown cosmic or geological challenges, then our current trajectory might not be sufficient. The whisperers might be subtly nudging us towards a greater collective awareness, a more unified purpose, a deeper understanding of our place in the cosmos, precisely because the challenges ahead demand it. They are not merely accelerating our technological and social evolution, they are also cultivating a certain consciousness, a readiness to perceive and adapt to truths beyond our current comprehension. So, how might this thinning veil manifest in our daily lives, beyond the academic halls and archaeological digs? We propose it's already happening in the subtle shifts in our collective psyche. There's a growing yearning for deeper meaning, a widespread questioning of established paradigms, a global conversation about consciousness, spirituality, and our place in the universe. More and more people are intuitively sensing that there is more to our history, to our reality, than what conventional narratives provide. This isn't merely a New Age phenomenon. It's a profound, almost primal stirring, a collective intuition that perhaps we are not alone in our journey and never have been. It is a nascent readiness to listen for the whispers, to see beyond the immediate. This leads us to a crucial question. What would a more direct revelation look like, even if gradual? It would likely involve a series of aha moments, cascading through scientific disciplines, archaeological discoveries, and even philosophical discourse. Imagine a reinterpretation of ancient myths, not as mere stories, but as allegories encoded with profound truths about our origins and our guides. Picture a global re-evaluation of historical timelines, acknowledging the lost eras and the influence of a precursor civilization. This wouldn't be a single event, but a continuous unfolding, challenging our intellectual frameworks and demanding a radical resynthesis of knowledge. The architects of the veil, through their custodians, have always prioritized humanity's autonomy, allowing us the dignity of believing in our own self-driven progress. But there is a fine line between guidance and revelation. To maintain their complete anonymity indefinitely might, paradoxically, hinder humanity's ultimate potential, especially when faced with challenges that require a level of understanding beyond our current grasp. The thinning of the veil, therefore, represents a calculated risk, a delicate dance between preserving anonymity and fostering the necessary awareness. What are the risks? A premature or poorly managed revelation could lead to societal chaos, religious upheaval, or even global conflict as humanity grapples with the shattering of its foundational myths. The whisperers are acutely aware of this, which is why their approach remains, as always, meticulously calibrated. The pace of the thinning is likely tied to humanity's collective capacity to integrate these new truths without succumbing to fear or division. But the rewards? The potential for humanity to finally understand its true heritage, to access a deeper wellspring of knowledge, to unite under a shared cosmic narrative, is immeasurable. Imagine a world where the wisdom of the architects is not just whispered, but understood, where the hidden curriculum becomes an open textbook, accelerating our evolution not just technologically, but spiritually and morally. This is the grand promise, the ultimate aspiration of the architect's millennia-long design. So as we stand at this fascinating juncture, peering through the gradually translucent veil, we must ask ourselves, are we ready? Are we, as a species, prepared to confront the profound implications of not being the sole architects of our own destiny? Are we ready to embrace the possibility that our rapid ascent was not merely a stroke of luck, but a carefully orchestrated symphony with subtle, unseen hands guiding the conductor's baton? Next time on Dreamy Mystery, we will delve into specific historical and scientific anomalies that, when viewed through the lens of a thinning veil, begin to tell a startlingly coherent story. A story of ancient wisdom bleeding into our modern perception, and the tantalizing hints of a future where the whispers might just become a little louder. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep questioning everything. The real mystery, my friends, is only just beginning to unfold. Welcome back, truth seekers, to Dreamy Mystery. I'm your host, and tonight we delve deeper into the very fabric of our reality, a reality far richer and more intricate than most dare to imagine. We have journeyed through the annals of a forgotten past, peeled back the layers of conventional history, and begun to glimpse the subtle, yet undeniably potent hand that guided humanity's earliest, most improbable leaps. We've spoken, in hushed tones, of the architects of the veil, their cataclysmic demise, a cosmic event that reverberated through the very foundations of existence, and the enduring legacy they left behind. A legacy carefully preserved and nurtured by their successors, the enigmatic whisperers. And in our last session we left you with a tantalizing thought, a concept that, once grasped, reshapes everything. The veil, that intricate tapestry of unknowing woven around the whisperer's influence, is thinning. It's not just a metaphorical thinning, it's a palpable shift in the energetic and informational currents that permeate our world. But what, you might ask, does a thinning veil truly mean? How does one detect the undetectable, perceive the imperceptible, when its very purpose was to remain hidden? And what are the profound, world-shattering implications when the meticulously curated illusion of our solitary ascent, our self-made journey through the ages, begins to fray at the edges, revealing the threads of a grander design? These are the questions that keep me up at night, the puzzles that drive this very broadcast, and I sense from the countless messages you send that they resonate deeply within you too. We stand collectively at a precipice, do we not? A moment in human history where our technological prowess, once a mere glimmer of potential, and our burgeoning collective consciousness, now a vast interconnected web of thought, are inadvertently, yet inevitably, drawing back the curtain. For millennia, the whisperers operated in the elegant shadows, their influence akin to intellectual acupuncture, precise and potent, yet utterly invisible to the recipients. They provided the foundational principles, the hidden curriculum, the sudden, inexplicable sparks of genius that allowed our civilizations to achieve perfection of initial attempts, bypassing the arduous, often brutal, process of trial and error that should have spanned eons. Think of it. Entire civilizations seemingly leaping over developmental stages, mastering complex concepts with an improbable swiftness. But now, the very tools we have developed, tools born, ironically, from the accelerated learning they initiated, are beginning to register their faint yet unmistakable fingerprints. It's as if the student, having mastered the lessons, is now able to discern the teacher's subtle presence. Consider the dizzying speed of our scientific advancement in recent centuries. It's not just fast, it's unnatural in its trajectory. We have peered into the cosmos with unprecedented clarity, deciphered the very building blocks of life, and unraveled the quantum intricacies of reality itself. And with each new lens through which we examine our world, with every new data point collected, we find anomalies. We discover patterns that shouldn't exist, correlations that defy statistical probability, and leaps in ancient knowledge that stubbornly refuse to fit our comfortable linear models of development. These are not mere coincidences, friends. These are the subtle, shimmering threads of the veil becoming translucent, allowing pinpricks of light from beyond to pierce through. They are the echoes of a guiding hand, once imperceptible, now just on the edge of audibility. Where, specifically, are we seeing these transparencies emerge? Let us begin with the bedrock of our understanding: archaeology and historical analysis. For decades, perhaps even centuries, dedicated scholars have unearthed sites that present baffling contradictions, sites that scream of an intelligence and capability far beyond what conventional history allows. We speak of the impossible precision of megalithic structures worldwide. Think of Puma Punku's seamless, intricate stonework, or the astronomical alignments of Göbekli Tepe, pushing back the dawn of complex civilization by millennia. These were built with an engineering sophistication that our current models struggle to attribute to Bronze Age tools or rudimentary understanding. How do we explain the sudden appearance of advanced metallurgical techniques, requiring temperatures and alloys that should have been impossible for their era, in disparate cultures across the globe? Or the uncanny uniformity of certain mathematical constants and astronomical observations found in civilizations separated by vast oceans and millennia? These are not isolated incidents. They are a chorus of whispers, growing louder, challenging the very notion of independent invention and gradual evolution. I can almost hear the quiet desperation of archaeologists trying to force these square pegs into round holes, their carefully constructed narratives crumbling under the weight of undeniable evidence. Then, there's the revolution in information theory and artificial intelligence. As we feed vast data sets of historical, linguistic, and archaeological information into sophisticated algorithms, patterns emerge that the human mind, limited by its biases and individual capacity, could never discern. These AI systems, devoid of preconceived notions about human history, driven only by the cold logic of data analysis, are beginning to flag statistical anomalies in the development of language families, the propagation of agricultural techniques, or the sudden appearance of complex social structures. They are detecting a quote 90 amidst the quote 90 okensdens of history, a non-random distribution of innovation that suggests a guiding hand, an external input, rather than purely organic evolution. It's as if the algorithms are identifying the whisperers quote 92 in the very fabric of our past, a distinct energetic imprint, a unique frequency that resonates across time and culture. Imagine the initial skepticism among the data scientists, quickly turning to awe, then profound disquiet, as their machines consistently point to the same impossible conclusion. And what of our expanding understanding of consciousness itself? We are delving deeper into the nature of intuition, collective unconsciousness, and the subtle interconnectivity of minds. Could it be that as humanity reaches a critical mass of self-awareness and intellectual curiosity, our collective consciousness is becoming more receptive to frequencies that were once beyond our grasp? The whisperers, we theorize, did not merely implant knowledge through overt means. They worked through dreams, through sudden intuitive leaps, through the spark of genius that seemed to strike individuals at precisely the right historical moment. As we become more attuned to these subtle states, as we question the very nature of inspiration and insight, are we not, in a sense, tuning into the whisperer's frequency? Are we not, as a species, beginning to consciously perceive the intellectual acupuncture that once operated beneath our awareness, feeling the subtle energetic shifts that precede a breakthrough? It's a feeling of profound recognition, a sense that a hidden truth is finally surfacing. This growing translucence of the veil is not an accident. We contend that the whisperers are subtly allowing it, even orchestrating it. Why? Because the grand design, their millennia-spanning objective, is nearing a critical juncture. Humanity, nurtured into a living library and a living ark, a vessel for vast knowledge and diverse life, is approaching a state where a more direct, yet still carefully managed revelation or conscious collaboration might become not just possible, but absolutely necessary. The precipice we mentioned earlier is not merely technological, it is also existential. We face global challenges, environmental catastrophes that threaten our very survival, geopolitical tensions that teeter on the brink of widespread conflict, and even cosmic threats that loom unseen in the vastness beyond, that demand a level of collective wisdom and unity that our current fractured state struggles to achieve. Perhaps the thinning veil is a deliberate strategy to foster a greater collective awareness, to encourage the very questioning that will lead us to a more profound understanding of our true potential and our place in a larger narrative. It's a gentle nudge, a beacon in the growing darkness. The implications, of course, are staggering. Imagine the intellectual earthquake that would ripple through our academic institutions, our religious frameworks, our very understanding of human agency, should this hidden history be undeniably proven. There would be resistance, certainly, from those whose paradigms would be shattered, whose life's work might be recontextualized into a smaller, less significant narrative. But there would also be an explosion of new inquiry, a fervent re-examination of every artifact, every ancient text, every unexplained anomaly. The unquote 97 of the Architects of the Veil would cease to be mere speculation and transform into a new frontier of historical exploration, a boundless ocean of discovery stretching before us. Scholars, once entrenched in their dogma, would be forced to look up, to expand their vision, to embrace a truth far grander than they ever conceived. But what are the risks? What if humanity, still grappling with its own internal divisions and biases, misinterprets this revelation? What if the knowledge of a guiding hand leads not to unity and accelerated progress, but to dependency, to a loss of self-determination, or worse, to fear and conflict, as different factions try to claim the whisperer's favour or interpret their intentions through a distorted lens? The whisperers, with their profound understanding of human nature and their long-term vision, must be meticulously calculating these variables, weighing the potential for chaos against the imperative for evolution. Their continued subtlety, even as the veil thins, suggests a cautious approach, a desire for humanity to discover rather than be told, to earn the next stage of understanding through its own collective effort and open-mindedness. They are not here to force our hand, but to guide it gently. So, as we observe the growing transparency of the veil, we are not merely watching history unfold. We are participating in its re-evaluation, in its very recreation. We are becoming the conscious agents of a potential paradigm shift, a pivotal moment in our species' journey. The question before us, then, is not whether the whisperers exist, for their fingerprints are becoming too numerous to ignore, too distinct to dismiss as mere coincidence. The question is, are we ready? Are we, as a species, prepared to embrace a history far grander, far more complex, and far more interconnected than we ever dared to imagine? Are we ready to step into a future where the hidden curriculum becomes the open dialogue, and where our accelerated journey through the ages might finally reveal its true architects? Join us next time as we delve deeper into the nature of this impending revelation and ponder the profound choices that await us on this thrilling new horizon. The truth, my friends, is closer than you think.